लोग शायद कम जानते हैं इस बात को।
हाँ नहीं, मैं मेरठ में पैदा हुआ। मेरे जीवन के पहले 17 साल तो मेरठ के हैं बिल्कुल कंटिन्यूअसली। मैं पहले सरस्वती शिशु मंदिर में पढ़ा था, उसके बाद मैं गवर्नमेंट इंटर कॉलेज में था।
अरुण जी, राजनीति में कदम क्यों?
नहीं, मैं पहली बात तो ये कि इसको आप राजनीति कह सकते हैं, सो कॉल्ड राजनीति, पर मैं राजनीति मुझे आती नहीं, ना मैं करूँगा। मैं तो ये समझ लीजिए कि भाई एक मन में आया कि मुझे कुछ करना चाहिए, तो मैं करना चाहिए, तो उसके लिए मुझे मेरठ मिल गया। तो मेरठ से अच्छी कौन सी जगह होगी? मतलब ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे माँ की ममता मुझे यहाँ खींच लाई है, तो मैं कुछ करूँगा जो मैं कर सकता हूँ, जो मेरे अंदर जो प्यार है, जो संवेदनशीलता है, जो बातें मुझे अच्छी लगती हैं।
अरुण जी, कल आप जब मंदिर गए तो मैं देख रहा था पुरुष हो, महिला हो, बच्चे हो, सब आपका पैर छूना चाह रहे हैं। आपका एयरपोर्ट का भी वीडियो बड़ा वायरल हुआ था, एक औरत आपके पैर छूना चाह रही थी। तो ऐसी भक्ति भी आपके लिए, मुझे लगता है लोग राम को ही आप में देखते, राम जी को तो किसी ने देखा नहीं।
वो उनकी आस्था है भगवान राम के प्रति, जिसे वो नमन करते हैं। अब उन्हें एक स्वरूप मिल गया है अरुण गोविल नाम का, तो वो मेरे चरण नहीं छूते हैं, वो भगवान राम की जो आस्था है उनके प्रति, उसको नमन करते हैं वो।
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. Home Minister Amed Shah has indicated that the centre may be open to the idea of rethinking the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in Jammu and Kashmir. This, of course, in its third term, if and when the BJP comes to power. He has gone on to say that the centre is ready to hand over the business of law and order to the Jammu and Kashmir police, and that in some places they are open to withdrawing AFSPA. Now, while it is true that terror incidents have indeed come down since the abrogation of Article 370 back in August of 2019, is the valley, and perhaps more importantly the armed forces who are guarding the valley, ready for withdrawing AFSPA? If the situation is indeed so rosy, as the Home Minister says they are open to the idea of withdrawing AFSPA, then the opposition parties are asking, why does the centre not hold elections in the valley simultaneously with the general elections? After all, you heard from the Chief Election Commissioner a few weeks ago when he announced the dates. He said they require at least 1,000 personnel, security personnel, per booth to conduct the elections in a free, fair and violence-free manner. So, is the statement by the Union Home Minister just wishful thinking, or is it a reality that post-370 Kashmir Valley is ready for?
आर्म फोर्स स्पेशल पावर एक्ट, जिस तरीके से हमने देखा कि आपकी सरबराही में जो नॉर्थ ईस्ट वाला जोन था और कुछ इलाकों के अंदर था, वहाँ पर हालात ठीक हुए, तो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता करके
जरूर हम इस पर जरूर विचार करेंगे।
आज यूनियन होम मिनिस्टर ये बात की है, हम उम्मीद करते हैं कि ऐसा हो। हालांकि अगर आप ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड की बात करें तो कमिटमेंट्स तो करते हैं, खुसूसन इलेक्शन के टाइम पे, और बाद में जब उनको इम्प्लीमेंट करने की बारी आती है तो इनसे पूछा जाता है तो बोलते हैं तो जुमला था।
जब कहते हैं कि अब अलायदी पसंद सोच रही नहीं और जम्मू कश्मीर के हालात इससे ज़्यादा बेहतर कभी थे नहीं, तो इंतज़ार किस चीज़ का, पहले ही कर देना था।
अब तक क्यों नहीं हो रहे? कारण क्या है? वो तो कोर्ट का आदेश, उसको छोड़िए। आप क्या कर रहे हैं? पूरी एक फलती फूलती डेमोक्रेसी को उस राज्य में खत्म किया।
All right, so the big question is, why has the Home Minister made this pitch for revoking AFSPA in Jammu and Kashmir now, just months or in fact weeks before the Lok Sabha general election? Compare the scenario between 2018 and what is the situation today in 2023-24. If we look at the number of terror incidents back in 2018, it was at a high of 228. Right now, it's come down to just double digits, just 44 in the entire calendar year of 2023. You look at encounters between police and terrorists, 189 in 2018, it came down to 48 in 2023. Civilian deaths, which is always a huge problem in Jammu and Kashmir, in 2018 it stood at 55. Right now, it's only 13 in the calendar year 2023. The deaths of security personnel have also come down from 91 in 2018 down to just 26. Stone pelting, if you remember in the aftermath of Burhan Wani's killing in 2016-17, the number of stone pelting incidents was very high, 1,200 plus in 2018, it's 0 in 2023. Shutdowns, more than 50 shutdowns, in fact 52 shutdowns in the year 2018, 0 shutdowns in the year 2023. So the government's case is that the ground situation has improved, and that is what warrants the government to consider the revoking of AFSPA, at least in some districts. But the security situation does indeed remain challenging, no matter what the numbers are saying. Any decision to remove AFSPA must be taken with a great degree of caution, where blueprints are still in work. Remember, this is what the security forces are up against in Jammu and Kashmir. Drugs and arms trafficking, it continues from across the border. There is no let-up as far as that is concerned. There is a shutdown of terror finance rings, which remains incomplete in Jammu and Kashmir. That's an unfinished business after the abrogation of 370. Radicalization as well as entrenchment in the state administrative machinery remains a concern for security agencies. Security forces also are continuing to track and punish any form of hybrid terror cells. And after all, electoral democracy at the assembly level is still very much a work in progress. The central government, the election commission are not confident enough of holding elections along with the general elections for the state assembly. That is perhaps the biggest indication that the security situation is far from normal yet in the Kashmir Valley. Yes, it's a tremendous improvement from 2018, but is it good enough for the revoking of AFSPA? Nalin Kohli is joining us. He's national spokesperson of the BJP. Ifra Jan is spokesperson of the National Conference. Najmuz Saqib, spokesperson of the PDP. Lieutenant General retired Sanjay Kulkarni is former DG of Infantry of the Indian Army. Nalin Kohli, first things first. So what the Home Minister has said is that the centre in its third term will consider revoking AFSPA. The plan is to pull back troops from Jammu and Kashmir. Right now there's about 500,000 troops. The plan is to pull back a substantial number of those troops, and that Jammu and Kashmir police will be given the primary responsibility of law and order. Opposition parties are asking, if the situation is so rosy, why don't you go ahead and hold elections in the valley?
They're two unrelated issues. The election issue also has been spoken about in the past. Zaka, that yes, at some time it is going to be held, is but obvious. Now, AFSPA is a special act, the Armed Force Special Protection Act, Powers Act, which is to protect the armed forces, because we need to bear in mind, or your viewers need to know, the army or the armed forces are mostly used for guarding the borders. They are called only in extreme situations when there is a challenging security situation within the hinterland, not on the border but within the mainland of any state, whether it's been parts of the northeast or it's been primarily northeast or Jammu and Kashmir, to then go ahead and take care of an aggression that is taking place, mostly militancy or terrorism. They are different words, but primarily by people who are challenging the Indian state and willing to cause civilian casualties, and the police is not capable on its own, for various reasons, of taking on this threat. So that's when the army or the security forces come in. This is a protection for them. Of course, there have been complaints in the past, but if you will notice under Prime Minister Modi's government and what Honorable Home Minister Amed Zakariya has said, and you will see the track record over 10 years, AFSPA is reduced in more than 70% areas of the northeast, which means it is to be used in a circumstance which is challenging. If there is an improvement in that circumstance, why should it be there? And that's exactly how democracy functions. The same is being spoken of Jammu and Kashmir. You yourself spoke about data. Two data stand out. Of course, it's heartening to note that the reduction of the deaths of civilians as also security forces, every death is a painful process for the family, it's a death of a universe. But nevertheless, it's come down. No stone pelting, zero. No shutdowns or bans, zero between 2018 and now. So it shows that basically the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the citizens of India, they are coming back into a normalcy. And why should there be any provision of law that curtails the normalcy, subject to that threat not being there?
Okay, Ifra Jan, the number of terror incidents, like I read out a moment ago, has come down from 200 plus to just 44 last year. Encounters from almost 200 to just under 50. Number of stone pelting incidents and shutdowns have come down to zero. If this is not an indication that things are getting back to normal, and therefore the Home Minister's comment that the centre is willing to consider removal of AFSPA in its third term, why don't you welcome this wholeheartedly? After all, this is something that all Kashmir parties have been asking for a number of years now.
5 years back, Zaka, BJP made a promise on the floor of the parliament and they said that they're going to restore statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. It's been 5 years since that promise. 5 years back, Zaka, the people of Ladakh were promised protection under 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution. 5 years into the promise and the entire Ladakh area is out on the streets, completely blacked out by media, and in minus temperature, they're all standing outside and saying what happened to those promises of 6th schedule. And people of Jammu and Kashmir are saying what happened to the promise made 5 years back. So when you ask me why are you being cynical? We aren't being cynical. Look at your track record of the BJP's fulfilling of its own promises. Nothing exists. 5 years back, they make a promise. 5 years later, they make another promise. 10 years later, they make another promise. 20 years later, they make another promise. Please do not fool the people of Jammu and Kashmir right before the Lok Sabha election simply because you somehow believe that this will fetch you votes. People of Jammu and Kashmir now understand that if you've not
but Ifra Jan, if indeed this would have fetched the BJP votes, the BJP would have gone ahead and done this already. The question is not a question of votes. The question is a question of security situation and whether the need for AFSPA is gone. If it's going to be done for electoral purposes, believe you me, any political party, including yours, would have done this right away on day one.
It's not
the question is not about electoral purposes. The question is whether the security situation on the ground warrants the withdrawal of AFSPA.
It's a question of promises that are made by the BJP every day and promises that remain unfulfilled even decades after they're made. 5 years back, we were told statehood will be restored. No, we have no timeline for statehood and they don't even talk about statehood anymore. In the recent rally that Prime Minister made in Jammu and Kashmir, he did not even mention it. So please don't give us another promise. This time is not to make promises. This time is to start working on those.
Okay, Nalin Kohli, quick response to that, after which I want to go to General Kulkarni and also to Najmul Saqib. Yeah. You've been making all kinds of promises about Kashmir.
So I think
it's time to keep those promises, Nalin Kohli.
I think, Zaka, our communication as a party of the BJP and of the Government of India, as the Honorable Home Minister spoke, is with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It is not with the political parties of Jammu and Kashmir who have brought Jammu and Kashmir to the brink of disaster, who never had a governance agenda and created a situation that required AFSPA to be there. I mean, those who are today sitting down and criticizing us should ask themselves, when they were in power for almost about 60 years, or maybe 50 years out of the 70 years, they are the ones to ask that why was there a need of AFSPA? So, I mean, AFSPA was there because they mismanaged the position so badly that it became a security threat to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. 40,000 people have died in Jammu and Kashmir. It's not a small number. Those are citizens of India, they are children of India. Those, a vast majority of them Muslims. So it's not a religious issue. It's very sad that any human being should lose their life because of the lack of governance. Today, if the security situation is better and a positive thing is there, I'm amazed that a political party's representative is finding reason to criticize. What do they want to celebrate? The 40,000 deaths that took place under most of their regime. It's terrible.
I want to get General Kulkarni in because there is a...
people are-
one second, Ifrajan, please, one second. Let me get General Kulkarni and then Najmul Saqib after that. General Kulkarni, there is a very strong case for removal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act because A, it is draconian. You should not have, different standards when it comes to justice. A, for the armed forces and for other security forces, paramilitary forces, etc. Most importantly, in the context of Jammu and Kashmir and in the Northeast, removal of AFSPA would be a signal, a completely unblemished signal that there cannot be a greater testimony, there cannot be a greater testament to the return of normalcy in the valley if you were to revoke AFSPA. I said the violence numbers from 228 5 years ago to 44 terror incidents in 2023. That's a substantial drop in the number of terror-related incidents. It could also, and I think this is a very important factor, and I'm sure you would agree with me on this, it would make accountability the paramount judgment yardstick for the armed forces, just like it is for every other arm of government, whether it is the civilian forces, the civil services, whether it is other arms of government. Accountability. AFSPA, many reckon in civil society and human rights organizations feel that AFSPA was a cover for lack of accountability when it came to alleged atrocities at the hands of the armed forces.
Zaka, good evening, and good evening to the fellow panelists. It isn't so. I think it's a very preconceived notion that AFSPA means it is to be used or misused. No, definitely not. It's a legal cover when the situation so warrants, and it's absolutely implemented when the situation is very, very disturbing. You brought out all the challenges, you've seen what it is. When the state law and order fails, and now you call for the army to go ahead. Now, there are instances where it is coordinate search, whether you go to arrest people, or when your own life is in danger. We've seen it. I have seen it, right? Because I had been in Jammu and Kashmir since 1977. So I know how it is and what happened in 89 and subsequently when I commanded my battalion over there. So it is very, very challenging. So it is under those circumstances that the AFSPA, let me assure you, as a commanding officer there, or even as a company commander there, not one man will misuse AFSPA. Aberrations, one odd aberration may be there, but mind you, over 40,000 incidents have taken place. How many times have such AFSPA been misused? Never. Never. Let me tell you, we all deal with them. We are part of them. We are handling them. And these terrorists or militants or whoever have come from across the border, instigating our own people and fighting the nation or creating problems of creating environment for insurgency, have to be tackled. If not, why would the Armed Forces Special Power Act be implemented in 1990 in the Valley and 2001 in Jammu? If that was so, it was only brought in as a legal cover to protect a soldier from, so that his life is not harmed. And you saw what all happened. Everybody knows, stone pelting from over 2,000 to next today. And to the incidents, the women on the street, the kind of protests that were going on, the people of Jammu and Kashmir themselves not realizing what they are doing and how they're being seen, or people, the politicians in the valley instigating them to do what it is. Even now we hear people say, talk to Pakistan, talk to Pakistan. What do you talk to Pakistan for? Terror and talk don't go together. And what is it that it's our part? It's ours. On the 26th of October 1947, by the instrument of accession, the state of Jammu and Kashmir became part of India. That's the final. Now, in that also, when you say talk to Pakistan, what does that imply? An Article 370 abrogation, much that it may have been diluted, but the abrogation was essential because that was something that was allowing people and instigating. It was just there for the heck of it, for no rhyme or reason, but creating an aura or insurgency. So therefore, it was necessary to abrogate, and after the abrogation, Zaka, you can see the difference. There's world of a difference. I'm sure everyone understands 20 million tourists. Wow, it's something unbelievable. 20 million and 55,000 foreigners. I've seen myself, I've seen the Tulip Garden there. Not easy to have these. That's only possible.
Let me ask Najmul Saqib, well, the point that General Kulkarni is making is that if you look at the number of aberrations that have happened because of AFSPA, it's minimal compared to the number of civilians who have died at the hands of terrorists over the last 30 years in Kashmir. So surely the comparison is an unfair one. It outweighs one over the other. If the aberrations are only a handful, then that indeed is the case for keeping AFSPA in the statutory books in Kashmir. Najmul Saqib.
I think there's certainly a lot to contest General Kulkarni's argument or the thrust of the argument. But let's leave it for another day. Let's focus on the main topic, which is at hand today. Look, AFSPA is a remnant of colonial legacy. We've seen how the core of AFSPA, the Disturbed Area Act, has been very shrivelly deployed in Gujarat for the segregation of Hindus and Muslims. We saw how even AFSPA in Jammu and Kashmir, how even that has led to a lot of problems. I would not like to go into it because, those come into the security scenario. But let's, if it's focused on, bringing the dividends of peace to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, I think no one in his right mind would like to, have a contrarian view. But all we are saying is that if it's done in good faith, everyone is on board. But if what happens is, if we say the same thing, if we ask for demilitarization, if we ask for removal of AFSPA, you brand as Zaka, you have called me a number of times that you will be an anti-national if you call for same things.
No,
right?
One second. Come on. No, hang on. Mr. Saqib, I can't remember the last time you were on my show. Okay.
I don't know.
This is probably the first time I can remember that you're on my show. Ifra has been on my show a number of occasions. You can please check with her. I have never called any spokesperson of a mainstream political party an anti-national. Please, if you don't know what you're talking about, please refrain from doing so.
Let's leave it.
You're on CNN News 18. You're on Brass Tacks. You're on my show. Okay. Let me remind you that once again.
Yeah, sure. But let the viewers judge. Be the judge for that. My argument is, we don't have a problem if Home Minister is serious and is true to his word that they want removal of AFSPA. Every political party in Jammu and Kashmir will be happy and will be on board. But what we are questioning are the intentions of BJP. Is the intention just a ploy before elections, right? Just a ploy before elections to sort of, whatever may be the reason for electoral benefits? Then I think, we know what they have been selling.
But again,
to the people
I come back to that point. If I said this to Ifra as well, if there were to be electoral benefits to be gained by removing AFSPA, not just BJP, any political party, that's the first thing they would have done. It's not a question of electoral benefits at all. It's a question of whether the security situation on the ground allows you to remove AFSPA. No one for a moment, no one on this panel, certainly I don't believe that this law needs to be kept. One second, that this law needs to be kept if the situation on the ground does not warrant for it. It's a simple thing. Why is there no AFSPA in Karnataka? Why is there no AFSPA in Andhra Pradesh or in Maharashtra? Because the situation there does not warrant the need for an Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Whereas in Kashmir, there was a situation, there certainly was a situation which warranted the need to keep AFSPA. The question now is, has that situation changed? The central government is saying and the Home Minister is saying that they will consider because they are seeing a visible change on ground. I'm asking you, both Ifra Jan and Najmul Saqib, are you seeing the same situation on ground? Because this is the demand that you have been keeping for the last many decades now. So you should welcome it.
As I told earlier, we have welcomed it. We will welcome it. And if there's a serious initiative from the government of India towards demilitarization, towards removal of AFSPA for Jammu and Kashmir, we welcome it, wholeheartedly welcome it. Because this is the larger sort of, Delhi, as Prime Minister mentioned, Dil ki duri and Delhi ki duri. So if there is certainly an initiative towards that, we certainly do welcome it. All we are saying is that the intentions and the actions and their, words don't match. As Ifra rightly pointed out, from the floor of the House, from the Parliament, Home Minister said, 5 years we will have statehood, we will have elections. We have not seen anything of that sort. But let's hope, we are hopeful. Let's not be cynical. We are hopeful.
So, Nalin Kohli, no statehood, no election so far. Why should the people of Jammu and Kashmir believe the Home Minister when he says we will consider removal of AFSPA? I would imagine that is harder to implement than restoration of statehood or even conducting elections for that matter.
First, the AFSPA was brought in 1958. So it's not the BJP that brought it. It was felt by Parliament of India in its collective wisdom that you need an act like that for certain situations. So obviously, if there is a situation, the act will come into play. If the situation improves, the act has no reason to stay, which is what the Honorable Home Minister, Mr. Amed Zakariya, said. Number two, as we say in English, the proof of the pudding is in eating it. And the figures you gave about the state, about Jammu and Kashmir, and is that definitely militancy, terrorism, all of it has come down. As one of my colleagues on the panel pointed out, I think General Saab did, that 2 million tourists coming, it's a huge figure. And, foreign tourists also coming there. The economy is picking up. There's normalcy there. All of this is healthy signs for the next issue, which you're saying. At some point, there has to be elections. Now, one round of elections at the local level has taken place. Why is that not being spoken about? They did take place. So, therefore, this always changing the goal and saying, this hasn't happened, so it is bad, is not the way you look at a situation which is improving. You see what it was and where we are. How much is the improvement from what it was and where we are? In this process, what all has happened, and going ahead, can the next steps be taken? That's exactly how you see it. But there are political parties who will say, no, let's talk of the next steps, but let's ignore all the good that's happened. And that's my problem with the political structure that we've seen in Jammu and Kashmir, which has been a negative portrayal. I think we should celebrate the good things, that there are, there's a return of normalcy to a very large extent. And if there is a return of normalcy, the next steps that have to happen logically will happen. Why would they be prevented? But the timing of that will be to the wisdom of the government. The government will choose when it is conducive to take the next step.
Okay.
And as you are seeing the situation improve, you are seeing conducive next steps happen.
Ifra Jan, the implications of potentially removing AFSPA would also mean, or the underlying conditions would necessarily mean that A, as the Home Minister said, that the central government has confidence now in the Jammu and Kashmir police to maintain law and order, that there is no trust deficit with the Jammu and Kashmir police anymore, that the centre is willing to allow the Jammu and Kashmir police to take the lead on security matters, and that the Jammu and Kashmir police is being trusted with maintenance of internal security in Jammu and Kashmir, terror incidents reducing and stone pelting incidents coming to zero. All of this would then enable eventually the restoration of statehood and the conduct of assembly elections.
You see, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Looking at the promises that are being made, let us see when they start getting implemented. Because so far, as I said, 5 years back, they promised statehood. They've not implemented it. They're not even talking about it anymore. Today, they promised something else. Let us see when they implement it. Mr. Nalin Poli pointed out, he said, what if it's because of parties like National Conference that AFSPA had to be gotten in. Sir, if you knew the history of Jammu and Kashmir, you would know that National Conference, 7,000 National Conference workers were gunned down simply because they stood for democracy and they stood for the constitution of this country. We were the first casualties of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir. And to remind you that last 10 years, it is your government, the BJP government that is in place in Jammu and Kashmir. First, in the PDP-BJP alliance, and now for 5 years directly ruled by centre. So if you've done so well, why are you still making promises on removing AFSPA? 10 years into power, why have you not been able to maintain the situation that you could have actually started removing it? You could have actually started doing it. So for 10 long years, it's been your government. And one last point I would like to make, Zaka. Kulkarni Saab made a point saying that never has the Armed Forces Special Powers Act been misused. The only person or the only authority that can judge whether AFSPA is being misused or not is a judicial body, is the independent judiciary. And AFSPA ensures that no case ever goes to the judiciary. So I'm sorry, nobody can sit down and say it's never been used. You're not the judge. The judges who sit in our courts are not allowed to assess that, simply because AFSPA protects the soldiers from that legal question.
No, there have been instances. Let's be true to the facts. There have been instances. Machil is one encounter I can think of where
But what exactly is Armed Forces Special Powers Act?
So I'm not disputing that. To say that it's never been misused would be an inaccuracy. But that's not the point of the debate. I want to come back to General Kulkarni to the simple contention that if in the Northeast, and at one point of time the insurgency in the Northeast was far graver, General Kulkarni, than it was in Kashmir. But in the Northeast, in large parts of insurgency-inflicted Northeast, AFSPA has been removed. If, as the government says, after 370, the situation has come to such a normalcy, then they should be removing AFSPA in Kashmir as well. What is the justification for continuing to keep AFSPA in Jammu and Kashmir, whereas in large parts of the Northeast you've removed AFSPA?
See, Zaka, 75% of the Northeast, AFSPA has been removed. There's no denying the fact. Even in Jammu and Kashmir, they're slowly studied. What do the statistics say? That 80% normalcy has come. If the AFSPA was to be removed anytime, the people of J&K themselves have to cooperate. If the people of J&K were not to cooperating with anybody else coming from outside, there would be no need of AFSPA over there. The fact that the soldiers operating, again say, aberrations will be there. But just imagine if I were to ask you or anybody on the panel, name 5 aberrations that the Indian Army has done, you would probably finish at 1 or 2 of them. That's it. Because there aren't any aberrations, we take care. I've commanded a battalion there for 3 years here. I wouldn't ever kill a person. Never again. I would rather pull up my troops if anything went wrong. But the people have to cooperate. It's very, very difficult because people are influenced. They have their own compulsions for doing things over there. So therefore, situation is slowly, steadily limping to normalcy. 80% of the situation is normal, but as yet not 100%. And that is the reason why. Because you have a neighbor which believes in using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. And therefore, even in incident that has just happened in Punj and incidents which have happened in Rajouri, how do they happen? There are people who are trying to give cover to these kind of people who are operating from across the border. So all these things have to be seen. It's a sensitive situation. And therefore, nobody wants AFSPA. Who would want an AFSPA? Nobody would want it. Why would we want to have it either?
Najmul Saqib, the recent incidents that we're seeing in Rajouri, particularly in that belt in the last 3-4 months or so, is evidence enough and is reason enough to why AFSPA should be kept on the statutory books as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. If there was a visible decrease, yes, the numbers are saying one story, but what the pictures are showing over the last three months or so, particularly in the Rajouri belt, not so much in Kashmir, belies the fact that AFSPA should be taken away.
Look, Zaka, when we raised the hue and cry for removal of AFSPA, it was based on logic. It was not just hyperbole and rhetoric. Let's look at why we are cynical today, as we see both panelists from Kashmir who are cynical about this decision. Let's talk about Jammu. Jammu is, as a district, it has been largely militancy free for the last 2 decades, and it's a fit case for the removal of AFSPA. You remember in 2003, 2005, then again in 16 and 17, and in between also there was a period where both the main regional political parties of Kashmir demanded the removal of AFSPA from Jammu in a phased manner. I mean, we're not crazy people that we know the situation was not favorable in a lot of districts, but at least what we asked at that point of time was a phased withdrawal of AFSPA. And if the government is serious today, let's see a practical plan from them. What is the time frame for the removal of AFSPA? And how are they going to do it? From where they're going to start it? I think these are the questions that we would like to hear from the government. That's all we want.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. I guess this will be a matter that will be taken up after the general elections, as the Home Minister indicated. One of the interpretations or the way to look at what he has said is that the government feels confident enough that they can consider looking at revoking AFSPA, at least in some non-terrorism affected districts of Jammu and Kashmir, much like they have done in the Northeast. But to get to that point, they'll have to take the political parties in Kashmir along, the people in Kashmir along, and of course at some point, as the Supreme Court laid down, there has to be elections for the State Assembly before the 30th of September 2024. We'll wait and see how this debate plays out both in the Valley and beyond. But thanks very much to all our guests. I want to move on to another geopolitical power play that's been going on between India, China and Pakistan, even as the Modi government is adopting a more visibly assertive foreign policy, particularly when it comes to China, to try and counter its expansionist designs. The latest flashpoint emerged when External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar backed the right of the Philippines to its territorial sovereignty. He's on a visit to Southeast Asia. Remember, the Philippines has been stuck in a dispute with China over the South China Sea. The Xi Jinping regime has said that maritime disputes between countries concerned and any third party is not in a position to interfere. Of course, that was a reference to India. It comes at a time when China's diplomatic expansion is going on almost unchecked in the Maldives, in Sri Lanka and Nepal, even as China continues to claim all of Arunachal Pradesh as its own territory. At times, even saber-rattling at the line of actual control, where a resolution has been not forthcoming for the better part of the last 4 years since the Galwan incident. Given the proximity of China's strategic interests with Pakistan, is it time for India to junk its age-old approach of balanced diplomacy? Is it time for India to also reject the One China policy?
Every country has an interest in maritime security, in maritime safety. Every country has the right to uphold and enforce its national sovereignty.
All right, just let's run you through how India seems to have taken a more assertive approach when it comes to countering China. When China flexed and protested against the Prime Minister's visit to Arunachal Pradesh, he was there a few weeks ago to inaugurate the Sela Tunnel, which is the world's highest altitude tunnel. China at that time had called the boundary dispute an unresolved matter. India's counter to that was that Arunachal was, is, and always will be an integral part of India. China had flexed back at that time with military operations, expanding military operations near the line of actual control. India countered that back in January of this year with the centre launching as many as 35 projects to boost connectivity at the line of actual control. China said that it did not recognize what was illegally constituted as the Union Territory of Ladakh. India's counter to that was that China has no right to interfere in what is clearly India's internal matters. China went on to say that it has released maps claiming the entire South China Sea, the 9-dash line as they call it. And even though India does not have a direct stake in the South China Sea, you heard from the External Affairs Minister while he was in the Philippines a day or so ago, India has countered that by saying that it defends the Philippines and every other nation's right to defend its territorial integrity. China has said that it's forging defense ties with the Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal. India is countering that by batting for cooperation in the Quad countries to bolster maritime security. Brahma Chalani, strategic affairs expert, and Andrew K.P. Leung is independent China strategist. Both of them are joining us now. Brahma Chalani, there is a school of argument, if you will, that what happens with the Philippines or what happens with Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., their problems, their bilateral problems with China is something that India should stay away from because, after all, it is the internal affairs of another country. Why should India get involved? The External Affairs Minister in the Philippines saying that every country has the right to defend its territorial integrity and sovereignty, and China seems to have taken grave offense to that. How does India play this? Because India's got its own set of problems with China. The last thing India wants is third countries to interfere in that. Shouldn't the same principle apply to China's disputes with other countries?
China's disputes with neighboring countries are interlinked. For example, South China Sea. Whatever happens in the South China Sea directly impinges on India's economic, energy, and strategic interests. Or for that matter, whatever happens in the Taiwan Strait will impinge on India's security. For example, hypothetically, if mainland China were to forcibly absorb Taiwan, then its focus would turn to India, to Arunachal Pradesh, in the name of reunification. Therefore, both Taiwan issue as well as the South China issue are linked to Indian interests, and India cannot be a bystander without having any view on the developments there, because these developments that we are witnessing in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait are an open violation of international law. An international tribunal at The Hague very clearly invalidated China's claims in the South China Sea. And yet, what China has done is to heap scorn on that tribunal's ruling and extend its expansionism in the South China Sea. So this is an issue also for international security.
Andrew K.P. Leung, there was an UNCLOS verdict. This was a verdict by a United Nations recognized court back in 2016, which ruled in favor of the Philippines. China did not recognize that verdict. China did not implement that verdict. In fact, for the last year or so, since the new regime of Mr. Bongbong Marcos has come into power in the Philippines, every week we are seeing an incident between Chinese vessels and Philippine vessels. Why shouldn't India stand with a country? And what did the Foreign Minister of India say after all? He just said that every country has the right to defend its territorial integrity and sovereignty. China would believe in that principle. That's what China is elucidating when it comes to Israel and Gaza. That's what China is elucidating when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. So why should that principle, when the Indian Foreign Minister says it in the context of Philippines, be so touchy for China?
I think that there is a danger of mixing various scenarios or put them all in one single basket. In fact, for example, the situation in Taiwan is very different because according to international law recognized by the United Nations, Taiwan is not a country, and Taiwan is recognized as part of China because China is the recognized country representing the whole nation, including Taiwan.
But Philippines is a country, and the UNCLOS verdict ruled in favor of the Philippines as far as Scarborough Shoal is concerned. So how come you're not recognizing that?
Well, that's why I'm saying you can't mix Taiwan with the other situations. Now, as far as the Philippines are concerned, and of course the China's relationship with India, there are lots of border disputes. Both sides do not recognize each other's claims. The same situation applies to the situation in around the Philippines, because China has already consistently maintained its claims in the so-called 9-dash lines.
Well, the first time the reference to 9-dash line was made, even in Chinese literature, was after the year 2000. There was no concept of 9-dash line. And why should the rest of the world accept the concept of the 9-dash line? It's like tomorrow you can come and draw a line anywhere and say, this is the boundary between India and China. Why should the rest of the world accept that?
Well, that was not arbitrarily withdrawn all of a sudden. It goes back all the way to even before the change of power in China under the Kuomintang, and also the China's sovereignty and governance over
Can
that territory.
you show any historical paper or document, Mr. Leung, which shows that the Philippines, which is modern-day Philippines, was ever under any Chinese kingdom?
Well, we are not talking about the whole of the Philippines, for heaven's sake. Of course, Philippines is a separate country. We're talking about some islands out there.
The problem is one of convenience. China thinks that because it's the preeminent power in this part of the world, it can ride roughshod over smaller countries. And by the way, it's not just one. It's not just the Philippines. It is Japan, it is South Korea, it is Vietnam, it is Indonesia, it is Malaysia. I can go on and on and on. each one, and I'm not even talking about Taiwan, forget about Taiwan, all right? Excluding Taiwan, all of these countries have a problem with China. It's China that is creating the issue with all of these countries. Because it's revising history. It's coming up with, oh, in 1895, we controlled the Senkaku Islands before the war with Japan. Oh, we had this 9-dash line and therefore Scarborough Shoal belongs to us. I mean, we're living in the 21st century. Why are you going back to 1895 and to the 9-dash line? You're revising history.
Well, I think again you're mixing up the Senkaku Islands again, because if you talk about the Senkaku Islands, you've got to go back at the end of the Second World War, and then at the end of the Second World War, it was recognized by the United Nations, by all the powers, that Japan should have handed back the island to China, but that was not the case. It was given to Japan again for administration. So let's not mix up all the other.
Again, so what happened between 1895 and 1945? That's conveniently forgotten. The fact that Japan occupied those islands in those years, that's again conveniently forgotten. But anyway, be that as it may, let me go back to Brahmachalani. I think there is a larger point, which perhaps is a lesson for India as well, that the only way India or any other country in this part of the world, in the Indo-Pacific, can take on China in a way to remind China that there are rules, there is a rules-based order and China can't ride roughshod over it with or without the United States. Let's leave the United States alone for a moment. All of these countries that I mentioned have to come together with India to enforce the rules that the world function by. And that is that you don't just walk over another person's territory or claim another person's territory suddenly because you think you are the preeminent economic and military power in this part of the world.
You're absolutely right, Zaka. That's the reason why India has stood up to China for 4 years now. India has been locked in a military standoff with China following Chinese encroachments in Ladakh. And that is also the reason why small countries like the Philippines and Vietnam are standing up for their territorial and strategic interests vis-a-vis China. But I think it's important to keep in mind one important thing, which is that in international law, a territorial claim must be based on lasting and peaceful exercise of sovereignty over the entire territory concerned. Now, you take China's territorial claims over its neighbors. None of these claims meets the standard set out in international law. It is telling that these territorial claims from the East and South China Seas to the Taiwan Strait and the Himalayas are based not on international law, but on revisionist history rewritten by the Communist Party of China. China's weak legal case was highlighted by the Hague ruling of 2016, when an international arbitral tribunal unanimously rejected Chinese claims in the South China Sea. And the problem is that China's manipulation of history extends beyond advancing territorial claims. It often uses history to instill among the Chinese an abiding sense of nationalism, an abiding sense of grievance over the 110 years of national humiliation that China suffered after the communist takeover in Beijing. So it's all about revisionism, revisionist history, and which is now taking the form of covert territorial revisionism, like in the Himalayas, in the South China Sea. Without firing a single shot, China has redrawn the map of the South China Sea and is seeking to replicate the South China Sea model in the Himalayas by encroaching on the territory of even tiny Bhutan.
Okay, Mr. Leong, I'll give you the final word. I'd just like to add to what Professor Chalani was saying. It's also linked in a way, of course, much of this is also for domestic consumption in China because it rallies the nation, the nationalistic sentiment, so on and so forth. But at the same time, this is also directly proportional to how bad the Chinese economy is doing. if the Chinese economy were in a better place than what it is today, there wouldn't be the need for all this rhetoric. There wouldn't be the need for every week some Chinese vessel ramming into a Filipino vessel, or some Chinese jets crossing the median zone with Taiwan. There wouldn't be this need if China's economy was growing at 7, 8, 10%.
Just think about China's economy is only going downwards only after the pandemics. And if you look at what the China's economy was doing before the pandemics, it was doing extremely well. And then even at that time, China had been exerting its territorial integrity throughout the region. What's happening over
who
the
is
South
to
China
blame for the
Sea,
pandemic?
over Taiwan,
Is America to blame for the pandemic?
Even before,
may I remind you where it
China's economy
started from?
is turning downhill.
Mr. Liang, who is to blame for the pandemic?
With the Chinese economy, I think it's nonsense.
No, who is to blame for the pandemic? If you're saying yes, the Chinese economy has crashed after the pandemic, yes, that's factually correct. But where did the pandemic come from? It didn't come from Washington, it came from Wuhan.
Well, again, you're making outrageous claims.
Outrageous claims.
I think that the
first case of COVID-19 did not come from Wuhan. Is that your contention?
I mean, it sort of it originated from Wuhan. And if you look at the pandemics, a lot of pandemics originated in other countries.
Okay.
Some in the United States.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. At least I'm glad you accepted that it did originate from Wuhan. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to Andrew Liang and to Professor Chelani. But we'll see how this plays out, and I suspect in the third term of the Modi government, as and when, and if and when they come to power, I think the dynamic with China will certainly change, because you will see a lot more of this rhetoric, this public posturing, shadow boxing, if you will. And I guess you will also see, from India's point of view, a lot more cooperation with countries in Southeast Asia, because they are also at the receiving end of this Chinese aggression and Chinese revisionism, if you will. Finally, before we wrap up with the death toll at 6 now at the Baltimore bridge collapse, US President Joe Biden has hailed the Indian crew, a large number of people who were on board that container ship which hit the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. He's hailed them for the timely warning that they issued. The crew had alerted the authorities about a power issue prior to the collision, which then helped the authorities to shut down the bridge and ensure there was no traffic, and thereby saving lives.
6 road workers who were missing after a bridge collapsed in Baltimore Harbor are now presumed dead. Authorities announced the news on Tuesday as they pulled dive teams out of search and rescue operations since conditions in the dark waters had become more risky. State Police Colonel Roland Butler.
The last thing we want to do is put divers in the water with changing currents, low temperatures, very poor visibility, and so much metal and other unknown objects in the water. All it takes is one object to strike an individual, and all of a sudden we have a first responder trying to recover another first responder.
8 workers were filling potholes on the Francis Scott Key Bridge around 1:30 a.m. local time when a massive cargo ship crippled by a power loss rammed into the structure. The workers and vehicles on the bridge plunged into the water as a trestled section of the 1.6-mile bridge crumpled into the Patapsco River. 2 were pulled to safety, with one of them hospitalized. But some 18 hours after the accident, officials said there was no hope of finding the missing 6 alive in the icy water. Butler said authorities hoped to return divers to the water after sunrise on Wednesday to recover the workers' remains. He also did not rule out the chance that there may have been other vehicles on the bridge that fell in the water.
As unfortunate as may be, it's a distinct possibility. However, we don't have any information to support that at this point.
Officials credited the crew of the Singapore-flagged container ship named Dali for averting a potentially much worse disaster. Maryland Governor Wes Moore said they reported the power failure before the impact, allowing officials to cut traffic off the bridge. Moore said the Dali crew saved lives and called them heroes. The ship's manager said all 22 members were accounted for and uninjured. Authorities say the bridge was up to code and suspect no foul play. But the accident has forced the closure of one of the busiest ports on the U.S. eastern seaboard.
I've directed my team to move heaven and earth to reopen the port.
President Joe Biden has pledged full federal support in response to the emergency.
In many ways, our work is just beginning. to rebuild this bridge and deal with impacts in the meantime, to reopen this port and deal with supply chain impacts in the meantime. But today we are most acutely focused on the emergency operations underway and on the families that have been impacted. I have no doubt that we will rebuild together and that Baltimore will come back stronger than ever before.
Kavita, she has been arrested and whisked away by the Enforcement Directorate. She's also obviously extremely upset right now, given the fact that others in the Liquorgate scam have not really had their way in the court of law.
Mr. Sen, the election commissioners were always selected by the Prime Minister earlier as well. In fact, now there is a 3-member committee. It wasn't so always.
Why should we believe that just like Bengal was a breakout for the BJP in 2019, that the South will not be one for the BJP this time?
Mr. Vivek Srivastava, you are not, as per your political ideology, allowed to define any religious faith, so don't attach any meaning to it without understanding what Hindutva actually is, sir.
Presented by.
You're making your debut in parliamentary elections. How does it feel?
Madam, it feels great because we are representing our Karyakartas as a candidate, and I'm just a face of all the Karyakartas here, and Coimbatore is very important to us, Tamil Nadu is important to us, and all of us are working hard because when Modi ji comes back to power for the third straight time with a larger mandate, and Tamil Nadu should have a big representation and Coimbatore should have a representation because it's a growth oriented city. For the last 10 years the growth is lacking here. That is why very clear this time the people of Coimbatore will bless us, the people of Tamil Nadu will bless our party, and come June 4, BJP Tamil Nadu National Democratic Alliance will make history in Tamil Nadu.
Is Prime Minister Narendra Modi betting big on Coimbatore, and you've been meeting people, what do you think would be the vote share for the BJP this time around?
Madam, our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is betting big on all the Indian people, all the 142 crore people, and especially the 8.5 crore Tamil people. That's why you see the Prime Minister's bond with our Tamil Nadu is very special. It is closer to his heart. And the mood on the ground is very clear in Coimbatore that BJP, this time we will score more than 60% votes on our own, the National Democratic Alliance. And you will see a record margin of victory here. And the mood is very clear. Wherever you go, the common man, they believe it is their election. They believe they got to represent Modi ji here. They believe they got to strengthen Modi ji's hand. When common people think like that, it is very clear that there will be a wave. It's a wave election. In Tamil Nadu, you will see across Tamil Nadu, NDA, and especially in Coimbatore, NDA, we will come back with a larger mandate and Tamil Nadu will have a huge representation this time.
So what are the issues that you plan to highlight during your campaign? What do you think would determine the voting pattern in Tamil Nadu this time?
Madam, our leaders are already highlighting. With respect to Coimbatore, it is also a rural and urban mix. You have 2 constituencies which are completely rural and 4 which are urban and rural. So right up to the farmers issue, to the industrial issue, a lot of issues needs to be solved. So that a public representative is here which should represent the government here. And here the public representatives don't take much interest. Even the MP, the previous MP who chose not to contest this time, did not take much interest. So Coimbatore is waiting for somebody who can connect central government to the grassroots in this area. With respect to the whole of state, you have seen 33 months of DMK rule, heavy anti-incumbency, nobody wants it. Now the contest is very clear. People want Modi ji back and people don't want the state government even to stay in power for even a single day. So across Tamil Nadu, there is anti-incumbency against the state government, and that is one factor, and pro-incumbency for Modi ji. And more clearly, the people of Tamil Nadu want to strengthen Modi ji's hand when Modi ji is going to come back with 400 plus.
Sir, DMK says your secret ally is the AIADMK. ADMK, Eda Party says your secret ally is the DMK.
Now, I am saying both of them have gone hand in glove. They have joined together because they know that NDA is going to win big with a bigger mandate. So I am complaining for the last 2-3 months now. They have joined hands now. They are hands in glove. People of Tamil Nadu will give a fitting lesson on April 19 and June 4 the results will testify what we are speaking.
You're making your debut in parliamentary elections. How does it feel?
Madam, it feels great because we are representing our Karyakartas as a candidate, and I'm just a face of all the Karyakartas here, and Coimbatore is very important to us, Tamil Nadu is important to us, and all of us are working hard because when Modi ji comes back to power for the third straight time with a larger mandate, and Tamil Nadu should have a big representation and Coimbatore should have a representation because it's a growth-oriented city. For the last 10 years, the growth is lacking here. That is why very clear this time the people of Coimbatore will bless us, the people of Tamil Nadu will bless our party, and come June 4, BJP Tamil Nadu National Democratic Alliance will make history in Tamil Nadu.
Is Prime Minister Narendra Modi betting big on Coimbatore, and you've been meeting people? What do you think would be the vote share for the BJP this time around?
Madam, our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is betting big on all the Indian people, all the 142 crore people, and especially the 8.5 crore Tamil people. That's why you see the Prime Minister's bond with our Tamil Nadu is very special. It is closer to his heart. And the mood on the ground is very clear in Coimbatore that BJP, this time we will score more than 60% votes on our own, the National Democratic Alliance. And you will see a record margin of victory here. And the mood is very clear. Wherever you go, the common man, they believe it is their election. They believe they got to represent Modi ji here. They believe they got to strengthen Modi ji's hand. When common people think like that, it is very clear that there will be a wave. It's a wave election. In Tamil Nadu, you will see across Tamil Nadu, NDA, and especially in Coimbatore, NDA, we will come back with a larger mandate and Tamil Nadu will have a huge representation this time.
So what are the issues that you plan to highlight during your campaign? What do you think would determine the voting pattern in Tamil Nadu this time?
Madam, our leaders are already highlighting. With respect to Coimbatore, it is also a rural and urban mix. You have 2 constituencies which are completely rural and 4 which are urban and rural. So right up to the farmers issue, to the industrial issue, a lot of issues needs to be solved. So that a public representative is here which should represent the government here. And here the public representatives don't take much interest. Even the MP, the previous MP who chose not to contest this time, did not take much interest. So Coimbatore is waiting for somebody who can connect central government to the grassroots in this area. With respect to the whole of state, you have seen 33 months of DMK rule.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. India is in election mode, but the focus today was the Delhi High Court. It was hearing the case of Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. The news media have been tracking the developments, as have been India's Western partners. In less than a week, Germany and the US have given unsolicited advice, and India has told both of them to mind their own business. Tonight, we'll tell you all about it. Meanwhile, in the US, Donald Trump is both a multi-billionaire and broke. What does it mean? We'll explain that. What does the latest unemployment data say about India and its youth? What is the Dutch Prime Minister doing in China? Why Saudi Arabia's entry into the Miss Universe pageant is not really a sign of women empowerment in the kingdom? Why Pacific nation Tuvalu security pact with Australia is a big deal? What the presidents of France and Brazil are doing in the jungles of the Amazon? How Uganda's lion story is a stark contrast to that of Gujarat? What are exercise pills? Should you be taking them? And what's the fuss over the Titanic door prop? It has sold for more than $700,000. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Foreign ministers of India and Ukraine to meet tomorrow in New Delhi. This